All right, folks, we had a little bit of a hiatus from Jets, Mets, and regrets, but we are back. We are better than ever, and we have tons of Jets, Mets, and maybe some regrets at the end. Stay tuned to find out. But I'm here with John, and believe it or not, John is another one of those. I know you guys met Steve a couple months ago, but John is another hybrid of those rare Jet and Met fans. Well, not rare in New York, I guess rare in Arizona. But welcome, John, to the pod. How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. Had a long day of work, but just got off of the Rangers winning 3-1 against the Toronto Maple Leafs. It was a good home win. Jimmy Vesey had 2 goals. He doesn't really score that many, so it was a good win for them. And Igor Shesterkin, their goalie, standing on his head, really putting together a good win. So I'm feeling good today, but definitely ready to get into some Jets talk and some Mets talk. What this show is all about.
Absolutely. And I mean, I guess the Rangers haven't won a cup since 94, but in terms of regular season success, they've had a lot more than the Jets and the Mets. So some of our viewers who are diehard Jet and Met fans might not be used to that type of, Ranger talk and success. So we apologize if that threw anybody off.
I mean, they haven't just had regular season success. They've had some playoff success too. Unfortunately, they haven't been able to win the Stanley Cup since 94, like you said, but they still have couple of playoff runs that maybe the Mets and Jets kind of hope that they had, but hopefully we get to change that in the next coming either this season, next season, few seasons to come. Should be good. Things are looking up for both those franchises, so Absolutely. I'm excited to watch them.
Absolutely, yeah, and hopefully it's sustained, right? Not just one and done like the Jets and Mets typically feel. But let's get into it. Starting with the Jets, I mean, obviously it's been an awesome year, right? Going from a 4-win season last year to where they're at now. But obviously we've missed a lot of time, kind of going towards the end of the season right now, that final stretch. And want to kind of get into Mike White versus Zach Wilson. I know some could say it's a big debate with Jet fans right now. Some could say that it's not that big of a debate at all. But wanted to hear your opinion on, the difference in the dynamic of quarterbacks. Obviously White as a starter is 1-2. And Zach Wilson as a starter is 5-2. And there's a lot more that goes into it than just record. But, hey, those are the records of the two right now. So, as a Jet fan, what's your opinion on these two guys?
Absolutely, Jason. No, you said it. I mean, record speaks everything in the NFL. You got guys who put up tons of numbers, but if they can't get the last throw of the game, the last touchdown of the game, the last point of the game that gets you guys over the hump to win the game, I mean, it doesn't really matter. Going into this season, the Jets fans were really excited to watch Zach Wilson play for a full season, but unfortunately we didn't get that. He was out the first 3 weeks of the season. We had to wait till week 4 to see him, and he played well. I mean, in his first game against Miami, I know that it was a Tua-less Miami team, but he played well and managed the game well. He was coached well. It was really only those 2 games. He only lost 2 games all year so far, and both of those games were against the Patriots. And as the tale as old as time, Bill Belichick always he gives young quarterbacks, usually rookie quarterbacks, but Zach Wilson hasn't really had 17 full games yet under his belt. So you can't really say that he's anything more than a rookie at this point, even though he has had that second year under his belt. But, he's been winning those games, and although his numbers haven't been great, sometimes his game management is exactly what the Jets need. And then you think to how badly he was exposed in those Patriot losses, and with Mike White coming in and kind of saving the day against that Chicago game, passing for over 300 yards in that game after not starting for a whole year, and against that Bengals game where he had 400 yards. And, people get this idea that, Mike White is definitely the guy, but, he's struggled the last couple weeks. Maybe he also threw over 300 yards again against Minnesota, but, he didn't get the win. And then Buffalo, who's a great team. I mean, you got to hand it to Buffalo, at home's really tough place to win. And that game came down to the last possession again. And, the quarterback, you got to put the team on his back, and unfortunately fell short. And that's kind of where we're at right now. I think I agree with Robert Saleh. I think I understand where he's coming from, where, some things that Zach Wilson wasn't really executing well. Maybe it was a good thing to put him on the bench for a little bit, let him get his mind straight, really focus on on his attributes rather than going out there and winning games with all the pressure that the New York media puts on him and probably on himself too. So they're both two really young quarterbacks. Mike White is 27, Zach Wilson's only 22. So these guys they're young and they're growing. So you got to give both of them the rope. And with the strong defense that they have, that no game is out of reach, and it's really going to come down to game management, play calling, and just making those key throws in those key times. And it seems like Mike White was able to make those passes more often than Zach Wilson. But like I said, they're both still young.
Yeah, absolutely, and I agree a lot with that. And I think I really sit here sometimes and wonder if after that New England Patriot game, the heartbreaking game, I mean, I still picture myself sitting on the couch in disbelief that a punt return for a touchdown is how that game ended. But we'll move on from that. We'll definitely move on from that. But it's a winning league, right? And at the end of the day, the Jets were sitting at 6-3, right? And Zach Wilson had some rough games against, like you said, Belichick, and those defenses are always tough against those rookie quarterbacks. But I'm a big numbers guy, and some of the interesting statistics are going to be, I think those records, right, are definitely interesting. And Wilson has had a better record. But I have a couple stats too. So in the 3 games that White started, he has 952 yards passing with 3 TDs. In 7 games that Zach Wilson started, he has around almost 1,300 yards with 4 TDs. So there's a huge discrepancy, obviously, and White, almost probably going to be able to surpass that potentially next game, this upcoming week against Detroit. That's a huge possibility. But also too, I think you need to look at the running game, right? I think with Zach Wilson, even though he had a lot of games where I think he only had 1 or 2 200-yard games. He had that one 350-yard game against the Patriots where they lost the first game. But the running game in those Zach Wilson games where he's been winning, like, that was huge. And that's something that's missing right now in Mike White starts. It's just not as good. I think with Bam Knight, they found a potential 1-2 punch with him and Brees next year. But Michael Carter just hasn't been cutting it. Costly fumble last game. Which really crushed him. James Robinson, a lot of Jet fans don't know what's going on with him right now, but you got to think that obviously whether it's practice, being in shape, knowing the playbook, whatever it is, Saleh feels more confident in going with Bam, who has played well. So it'll be really interesting, but I think when you have to look at the players nowadays in the league, like, obviously if you have a Brady or Manning, you're going to always take a quarterback like that, right? And I don't think we could easily say right now that White's even close to a Brady or Manning. But I think you do have the dynamic of Zach Wilson. Even though he missed a lot of easy throws this year, he evaded, with a rough offensive line so far with a lot of injuries, he evaded a lot of sacks, something that Mike White wouldn't be able to do. So, yeah, I think ultimately it's going to be very, very interesting. But I think as Jet fans, we could just agree that we just want to win. At the end of the day, We don't care how we win. We don't care who wins. It doesn't matter. We just want to win.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you said, kudos to Zach Wilson. After that first New England loss, he looked terrible, running out of the pocket, not stepping up in the pocket, not making those easy throws. Comes back in that Buffalo game, nobody gives the Jets a shot. And, like you said, the running game had a huge part in that game. But, I mean, hey, sometimes that's just how you win football games. It's just easier to win that way. If you control the clock, you control the field position, and you just let your quarterback make those, third down conversions that you need to on those, out routes that just are nicely placed balls. And, I think back to that Buffalo game a lot because after the New England game, everybody thought there was nothing that, he was done. He was, put him on the bench. But he came back out and they won that game and he was the starting quarterback. And I remember there was that last drive that the Jets had. It was, there was like 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter and the game was tied and, they mainly relied on the running game on that drive, but they ended up getting inside the red zone, converting a lot of first downs. Like I said, chewing up a lot of the clock. The offense came onto the field, gave the defense the lead with 3 points and one more drive to go. And, Josh Allen couldn't do anything. I mean, they started the drive on the 25-yard line and on 4th and 21, the Jets won the game and the defense put it away. So sometimes that's all you need. You just need the guys. Football is a team sport, through and through. And, the defense is, like they say, defense wins championships. And that's sometimes you got to rely on your defense, and the Jets have one of the best in the league. And just making sure that guys don't turn the ball over too many times. Like you said, Michael Carter did that this week, kind of really shot the Jets in the foot. And then it comes down to coaching, but it also comes down to player discipline as well. And I just don't think we've seen enough out of either of these two guys to really say one of them definitively has the job. We'll go with Mike White for now because we think that he has more of an upside, and that's fine with me. He's a little banged up right now, so we'll see if he's able to continue with this Lions game this week. But if he goes down, Zach Wilson's right there to pick up the slack. So I'm excited to see what this week holds.
Awesome, yeah, and I think we could both agree that. And real quick too, I know some people are hoping that me and John are going to have like a Shannon and Skip dynamic. Probably not going to happen, but we are going to do a Tebow episode in the future. So if you want to see a Shannon and Skip dynamic, just wait for that episode. That's going to be a really good one. Me and John have debated a lot on that. But anyway, going back to what we're talking about now, I think we could both agree that this team has a great defense. They got Breece Hall, they got Garrett Wilson, they have playmakers. I think it's just going to come down to offensive line and quarterback play in the future. But we could say the foundation is here.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. But yeah, I want to look ahead. We have 4 games left. We're going to have 2 home games, Detroit, Jacksonville, and we're going to go on the road against Seattle and Miami. So pulling up some statistics, I know just from playing fantasy, watching games, watching Red Zone, whatever it might be, Detroit is hot.
Detroit's really hot.
Arizona gets hot in the summer. We're talking 115. Right? I'm not sure if Detroit's that hot or if they're hotter. That's open for debate. But they are hot right now. Started off 1-6, and they're 5-1 in their last 6 games. So that's going to be a tough one. Jacksonville 2-2 in their last 4. And then we know Seattle and Miami, obviously 2 solid teams this year, 2 above average teams who are playing well, competing for playoff spots. So I think, so looking ahead, we're kind of looking at the Chargers schedule. They got Titans, Colts, Rams, and Broncos. And then Patriots have the Raiders, Bengals, Dolphins, and Bills. So looking at that Patriots schedule, I feel pretty good. Right now, they all have the same record, but with tiebreaker, the Jets are behind those 2 teams. So the Jets would have to technically finish a game better than those 2. But Chargers, kind of an easy schedule. I mean, I think Tennessee is a good team. Broncos have that good defense, but overall, I could see Chargers winning out. So I think for this Jet team, obviously, I believe that if they were to go 4-0, that they will get a spot. I think the Chargers will lose at least a game out of those 4, and I think the Patriots will lose multiple games. I think 3-1 is where it gets a little tricky. Where I could see the Chargers running it up to 3-1. And at the end of the day, if that's what's said, like, it still was a successful season. I think I might have had the Jets at 10 wins this year, actually. I need to go back and watch my Jets prediction episode for preseason. And it is a win, right? But I think when we look back on the season, if that was the case, and we could talk about it when the time comes, a lot of missed opportunity with those Patriot games, right? A missed opportunity with that Vikings game. Could say a missed opportunity last week with the Bills game. So it's going to be tough, but hey, at the end of the day, they're still playing meaningful games in December, and that's all we could ask for. But as Jet fans, we're greedy, right? And we always want more, and it could have been more. It could have been more right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of how New York is. We want to win no matter what the cost, but I appreciate where the Jets are right now. I mean, last year I remember there was those 3 or 4 games where they gave up. I think they averaged like 40 points a game that they gave up, and it was like one of the worst stretch in NFL history. And now, halfway through the season, they were the number 1 defense in the league. I could look up the stats now. I'm sure they're still definitely top 10, probably maybe even top 5. So I really like the direction that the team is going in, really relying on the defense, playing that small game. But you got to fit the pieces in where they lie. And the Jets they need to come to play. It's unfortunate that we're getting Detroit and Jacksonville now later in the season when these 2 teams also seem to be heating up and we seem to be cooling down a little bit. But again, when you have a good defense, and it seems that these 2 teams, specifically the Lions and the Jaguars, they really rely on putting up a lot of points, and that's going to be tough to do against the Jets defense. So keeping those games close again, it's just going to come down to game management and getting that one lucky play or that one special play that you need to win the game. I never really saw the Jets blowing out many teams this year. The Bears was kind of an anomaly because they didn't even have Justin Fields, and that was kind of like the only real comfortable win that the Jets had this whole year. And I really didn't think that they would have any comfortable wins this year, so that was nice. But every game is going to come down to the fourth quarter. It absolutely is, and that's kind of the way that the Jets approached this year is making sure that they stay in every game, and hopefully, the other team makes a mistake and we capitalize, or our defense makes a big play. That's kind of how it goes, and the Jets have been successful doing that this year so far. They're still 7-6, they're still above 500. So let's try and just finish the season strong. If they don't make the playoffs, so be it. It's a tough league. Those guys get to play. Those guys get paid to play too, right? So, and we're in a very tough division as well, right? So it's just going to be difficult from here on out for many years, but I think that the Jets are really setting themselves up for years to come.
Absolutely, yeah. And then that's all we could ask. And I mean, hey, we're rooting for them, right? I'm rocking my Jets. Oh, actually, I can't show off my full outfit because looks like my iPad follows me as I go. So we'll have to figure that out another time. But I got my Jet sweatshirt on right now. Here we go. You can kind of see it. Probably not going to be able to pull up my Jet pants all the way to my neckline right now, but I have some Jet pants. We'll have to get those. Maybe I'll send a picture over, and we'll get that picture in the pod. We'll see the full outfit. But yeah, we're rooting for them. We live, breathe, and die Jets, even though they disappoint us all the time, which they might end up doing this year. But we stick to it.
Yeah, I mean, I completely change my expectations week to week. I think football fans or sports fans in general just tend to ride the momentum waves, and they do that from time to time. They always reevaluate. But I mean, at the beginning of the year, when Flacco was in, this team looked absolutely dead. They were looking like they were, tanking for a top draft pick. And, the quarterback that we were waiting on, he came in and he ended up winning games. And, that's all you can do. And yeah, okay, maybe we played an Aaron Rodgers Packers team that is on the downgrade this year, and a lot. Tua got hurt, so we took advantage of that. But that's what you do, right? You can't lose those games. So I'm happy that the Jets are where they are, and that, like you said before, we can actually watch meaningful games in December. It's a nice change of pace than the last 10 years.
Yep, I haven't been able to say that in a long time.
Yeah, it sucks.
Yeah, we're going to switch over to the Met talk real quick, talk a little bit about free agency. Before that, though, we're going to have, I know we usually do the regret segment at the end, but we're going to have a brand new segment that we've never done before in Jets, Mets, and Regrets history. And it's called On This Day in New York Jet History, actually, believe it or not. It is sponsored by nobody because we currently do not have sponsors, but for everybody listening, if you want to sponsor it, if you have a company that does, let us know. We'll probably pay you to sponsor us for now, until we get big. But anyway, John, just so you know, on this day in New York Jet history, in 1968, December 15th, 1968, the Jets beat the Miami Dolphins, 31-7. And we have some great statistics. Our boy, our savior, 1969 Super Bowl III, Joe Namath went 6 of 10.
Broadway Joe.
120 yards. And then, I guess I'm a little bit too young for this guy, but Babe Peril went 9 of 15 for 121 yards. So I'm going to have to do some more research on Babe Peril to see what his deal was. But he had a pretty good game, too. I don't know if Namath got hurt or if they were doing some college, tag team quarterback play back then. I'm not sure exactly what was going on, but both of them had, some decent throwing stats. So.
Look at that. How'd they end up doing that year?
Super Bowl, man. So, hey,
yeah, exactly.
A game where maybe Mike White and Zach Wilson both playing, beat the Dolphins 31-7, maybe the last game of the year. That could be foreshadowing. That's all I'm saying. That history repeats itself, right?
It absolutely does. And let's see, hopefully one of these guys, the team really tends to love Mike White. They're kind of all in on him. They're all wearing his T-shirt. So he's kind of got that Broadway Joe swagger to him. Now he's just got to, put the product on the field and go win some ball games,
Yeah, he might not do it with as much swagger, but he's got like the quiet, like confidence and quiet swagger. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
Right.
But let's go switch over to the Mets real quick. I know a lot of Met fans. I don't know if they wish for a genie bottle or whatever those things are called. I don't know if they wish for it for Christmas from Santa and stocking, but Uncle Steve, man. And for all of you who don't know who Uncle Steve is, I actually do have an Uncle Steve, but I'm not talking about him.
I have an Uncle Steve
Uncle
too.
Steve. Oh, look at that. So we both have Uncle Steves. Well, we
Yeah.
each have two Uncle Steves.
We do. Yeah.
Uncle Steve's and then Uncle Steve, the owner of the Mets. But John, what a freaking off season, man. I mean, he bought the team knowing that the dynamic around the Mets was going to change. And going into this past season, right, I talked a lot on the podcast. Like, we got Scherzer and Marte and Escobar and Canna, and we were feeling really good. And it was a good year. 101 wins, second most in franchise history. Lost in the wild card, didn't finish as we would have liked. Our free agent acquisition, I'm sure you could talk about a little bit more when you were at the game. Scherzer didn't pitch to his standards. And, it wasn't looking good to start. Jacob deGrom left for Texas, and it was kind of like, all right, like, what is going to happen? The Phillies have gotten better, right? We're signing Trey Turner. The Braves are still the Braves, right? Still a really, really good team. So, what are the Mets going to do? And I think right off the bat, they went off and signed Verlander. They signed Senga, Quintana, Robertson, traded for Brooks Raley. And still with prospects in the wing with Alvarez and Beatty. I know they haven't improved the offense as much as a lot of people would like, but have some promising guys who could play DH, could catch, could play third base. So you have a lot going on next year. But overall, how would you summarize free agency up to this point? And I think we say up to this point because we know at any given moment right now, not Adam Schefter. I don't know who the Major League Baseball equivalent of Schefter is. But anyway.
It'd be like Jeff Passan or Ken Rosenthal, one of those guys.
Yeah. So any given moment, Ken Rosenthal might, throw some hammer on us that Uncle Steve gave us another early Christmas present. But yeah, what's your opinion overall on this Mets offseason, John?
I mean, it's absolutely exceeded my expectations. I mean, I think the entire summer, as we were watching the Mets, go to 101 wins, everybody was kind of under the understanding that this team that we were watching this year in 2022, it was not going to look like the team that we see in 2023. And I don't think anybody knew whether that meant that the team was going to be better or whether it was going to be worse. So kind of, we wanted to win the division. Unfortunately, fell short. Playing the Padres, they were a good team. Unfortunately, again, just fell short against them too. And once the season ended, it kind of felt like, well, what did we win all those games for when we didn't even make a playoff run? We won one game and ended up losing two. It was really disappointing. And Uncle Steve, I mean, he came to bat, he put his money where his mouth is, and he decided that he wanted to keep Jacob deGrom. He said that all year long. Jacob deGrom at the beginning of the season, he said that he was going to opt out of his option, and I don't think that really surprised many Mets fans because for his entire career he was underpaid. 2 Cy Young awards, probably the best pitcher in baseball during his time on the Mets. But something about Jacob deGrom just made him want to go to Texas instead. You could probably say it was the 185 million reasons that made him want to go away from the Mets that probably the Mets weren't willing to go with. And again, I think that might have to do something with the fact that the Mets understand his injury history, his struggles staying on the mound. And I just don't think the Mets wanted to commit to him that long term. And if you've noticed, a lot of these free agent signings that they've come up with, a lot of them tend to stay in that 2 to 3 year window. So I think that Billy Epler and Steve Cohen, they kind of had this idea about where they were going with this team and how they were going to hone in on a certain window that they wanted to win in. And they've certainly done that. Once Jacob deGrom left, it was only 3 days later when they signed the best pitcher in the AL in Justin Verlander. And I can't say, I've watched too much of Verlander in my experience. I don't watch too much of the AL, but obviously who he is and his numbers are impeccable and he's won 3 Cy Young. So, he's great. He's coming off of a World Series championship win. I couldn't be more thrilled that he's going to be pitching with Max Scherzer 1-2. I mean, it's a great 1-2 punch. Getting Quintana, he pitched great in the playoffs this year. He ended up the Cardinals ended up losing that game because they blew it in the ninth inning. But that was no fault to Quintana. He ended up pitching well against the Phillies in that game. So, I mean, as a third starter, you got to think like between Quintana and Bassett. Bassett didn't really show up in that last Braves series or in the playoffs. So you got to think that this is an improvement as well. And then Senga. I mean, this guy has been an established pitcher in the Japan League for 10 years. I don't think he's had. I could look at his stats. I might be wrong, but I don't think he's had a season where he's had an ERA over 3. And he's just been lights out. He's got some pitch called a fork ball that I'm very excited to watch this season. We'll see what that is. And if he's a fourth, I mean, the rotation is really great going through. And then you got Tyler McGill and we'll see what the rotation looks like with the injuries that are inevitably going to hit the Mets. But I mean, you can't be upset with the acquisitions that they've had, and that's just the pitchers, the starting pitchers that they had. Getting David Robertson, he's an established relief pitcher that they got, and I completely forgot about Edwin Diaz too. I mean, he was the first one that Steve Cohen signed. My personal opinion, 5 years, $100 million, I believe it was. That seemed a little steep. Relief pitchers tend to have their ups and downs. I mean, Edwin Diaz himself has had a lot of really high ups and really low downs on the Mets. So we'll see how that contract ages over the years. But I mean, he was by far, in my opinion, the best closer in baseball this year. The trumpets are absolutely electric. Every time those trumpets play at Citi Field, something good is going to happen. The Mets are going to get out of a jam. They're going to get out of the top of the lineup, or they're going to win the game. That was kind of the situation. The Mets really only had to win 8 innings of baseball this year with him. So that's the rotation, the pitching staff. And I don't even think they're done yet. You still have to bolster a couple of things in the bullpen, but it's good. It's looking good on the pitching side of the ball. And then personally, my favorite acquisition has been the Brendan Nimmo signing. I know that he's not the best player in baseball. I know that he's not the best center fielder in baseball. But he's a homegrown talent. The Mets drafted him. They called him up, and every single time the Mets have a big game, a big walk-off, and Steve Galves is interviewing him. He's always saying, "I'm so happy that the fans came out to support us. Keep coming out. I love that we're winning. We're going to keep winning. So I love you guys. Keep coming." I mean, if the Mets end up winning the World Series, it would feel wrong if Brandon Nimmo weren't on the team. So I know that I said before he kind of had the 2 to 3 years. Steve Cohen had the 2 to 3 years idea, but you had to sign Nimmo long term. I think it was just good for the team, for the ballpark, for the ball club in general. So I'm very happy with that. So I feel like I'm going on and on and on, talking about this because there's just so many things that they've done. I mean, look at the Chicago White Sox. What have they done? Nothing. You know what I mean? But we're the New York Mets, baby. We got to win. So that's kind of how the offseason's been going. And the stove is hot. Stove is very hot, Jason.
Oh yeah. We don't want to get burned. We gotta be careful. We have to put sunscreen on. Well, that doesn't help you with the stove, actually. But yeah, and then you touched up on. I won't touch up on all the homegrown guys. I think you hit you hit a home run right there with Nimmo and Diaz and how we feel about those guys and the performances and them long term. But yeah, I think it's awesome, right? I think payroll approaching $350 million this year, and it's funny that I believe the payroll tax, right? So the luxury tax that they get charged, the owners get charged. It's after $293 million. It's like the biggest percentile you could get charged of. And any dollar spent after $293 million is taxed at 90%. And they did that because of Steve Cohen. But he is just almost viewing it as a challenge. Like, look at me, look what I can do. which is crazy. Knowing that by the end of the year he'll probably be spending almost over 400 million between taxes and the actual payroll for this year. But I want to compare it real quick to show the Mets improvement, at least from a pitching standpoint. Again, this is a team that won 101 games this year without DeGrom for half the year and without Scherzer for
Right.
probably a third of the year. So not forgetting
Right.
that. But I think, again, we look at Verlander, right? Had a 1.75 ERA last year, lowest ERA of his career. 86 million committed to him, and you had DeGrom with a 3.08 ERA with 185 million. Not that money necessarily matters for Steve Cohen, but just going to show you that the Mets did technically not spend that much money if they would have retained their other starters, and they improved. Senga, same thing, a 1.89 ERA, and a lot will be said on can he pitch in America, right? Can he pitch in the Major League Baseball? But I think he has a track record where Billy Epler has brought guys like Tanaka and Otani over from Japan. He's had a say in those two signings, so I think that's huge in his proven track record of Japanese players coming over to America.
Right.
Senga did face Otani and have some success against him in the Japanese league. And then also in the World Baseball Classic, he pitched two innings against the American team, striking out 5. So
yeah, and I was just gonna say, Jason, the World Baseball Classic is coming up this year for the first time since 2017. It was postponed because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's going to be really exciting. Having a New York Mets guy who just got signed from Japan pitching in the World Baseball Classic before he ever pitches for the Mets. We're going to see him just a month before the season starts, pitching for Japan. It'll be exciting. I mean, if he ends up playing against, Dominican Republic or Puerto Rico or, even the USA in the semifinals or the finals, it's going to be really exciting to watch Senga play. And, I love this country. I love the United States of America, but if he's pitching, I don't know if I'm rooting for anybody to hit off of him. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's that preseason smack talk. You see what Senga did in the World Baseball Classic?
Yeah, absolutely.
Just you wait.
That's right.
But yeah, there's still a lot of unknown with him. But 75 million commitment to him versus Ty Walker 72 million, where I think we could agree that the upside, you know what you're getting in Walker, which is an above average pitcher, but Walker's not going to give you that ace potential that Senga can.
Yeah, and dude, we're talking about this like Senga's supposed to be our second starter. He's our fourth starter.
Yeah.
Third, fourth, depending on how good he is, maybe our fifth if he's not that good. Carrasco had a great season this year. He had 15 wins or maybe more than that, but at least 15 wins. The rotation is just it's really good. And adding this guy, for all we know, he could be our ace. He could outperform Scherzer and Verlander. It's absolutely possible. These guys are kind of older. How old is Senga? I actually don't. I didn't think about this.
I have to look. I believe he's 30 or 31.
Okay.
You have to double check on that, but I believe that's where he is. But yeah, that's huge. Then even Kitana, right, going 26 million committed, 2.93 ERA last year. So I think what the Mets did, and Walker with a 3.49 and Bassett with a 3.42, they upgraded. They upgraded this rotation based off of last year's performances at least, and that's what they needed when it came to crunch time. Even though the bats didn't perform in the playoffs, Bassett and Scherzer also didn't perform. So I think what they tried to do is get a better rotation going for this time around, right? And I think they're the only team in Major League Baseball who has 3 starting pitchers who started game ones of their previous year's playoff for their teams. Kitana started a playoff game. Scherzer started the first playoff game, and Verlander started the first playoff game for his
right.
team. So
wow, that's nuts.
Kind of a crazy statistic.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that, but you're right. That's nuts. Good, great. I'm glad. I mean, pitching is. Everybody always says it. Pitching. You can't trade away good pitching. It's the most important part of the game.
Yeah, and I think offensively, a lot of Met fans are a little bit antsy because I know that wasn't the best part of the team last year, down from the stretch and in the playoffs. But again, I alluded to it in the beginning of the episode where you got Alvarez, you got Beatty. Like, these are guys you didn't trade last year for a guy like Juan Soto, or not to say that the Nationals would have even traded him in the division, but like, these are guys the Mets are really high on, right? And Alvarez being hyped as the number 1 prospect in baseball, and I think towards the end of last year, without pressure, because the Mets already were in a playoff spot, he did show in the last couple games some of his power with the home run.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he just
double.
swung the bat and the ball went flying, and it looked like there was no effort there at all. So he'll probably, I mean, if he ends up having like a Gary Sanchez year, like what Gary Sanchez had when he was a rookie on the Yankees, if he bats 230, who cares if he's hitting 35 home runs,
Oh yeah, and the Mets just need some more power. You're going to have guys like Canna and Marte and McNeil and Nimmo who are going to get on base. So obviously, if Alvarez is hitting ninth or eighth, maybe he's not getting an opportunity to knock those guys in. But hey, if he hits for power, you could slide him behind Alonso, right? There's a lot of different possibilities that he could do depending on how he performs this year. So we'll wait and see.
Yeah, and let's hopefully, James McCann had a bit of an off year. Let's see, maybe he turns it around for the Mets. Who knows? The catching position doesn't have to be a hole like it is in most most teams in the league.
Yeah, and I think they'll have a lot of options this year. So they'll play that. Nito was a nice surprise last year. So yeah, we'll see what happens.
All right.
Awesome. Well, that's all we have for today, folks. So we're gonna go into our last segment, the one that you guys are very familiar with, the regrets of the day. So I'll start us off, John, and I'm gonna have two actually. So one is gonna be potentially a future regret. I don't know if you've ever done a future. I don't think I might have done a future regret before, right? But I'm gonna predict right now, John, that next off season, the New York Mets are guaranteed to sign Shohei Ohtani, and his contract will be the biggest in Major League Baseball history. I'm going to guess between a 10 to 12-year contract between 500 and 600 million, 50 million AAV. So that could be a future regret. I guess we'll have to find out if he actually signs with the Mets. It'd probably look pretty bad if he signs with the Yankees or somebody else, but I'm putting that on the line right now. And then my second regret is a regret that happened in the past. It definitely happened. But I hate to admit, and I hope Jet fans don't think that I am the reason why we lost against Minnesota. But against the Minnesota Vikings a couple weeks ago, I did a premature JETS, Jets chant with my friend Foster when I thought Garrett Wilson scored a long touchdown, but he did step out of bounds.
Right.
Around the 7-yard line. So Jet fans, I apologize if you were superstitious and you thought that I could have caused it. I'm here issuing my apology. But that definitely is one of my big regrets. And it wasn't a small chant. It was a pretty loud, everybody in the restaurant when we were watching the game. So those would be, a past regret and potentially a current regret.
Yeah, I mean, I think that signing Ohtani, I really don't think that's going to be a future regret. I think that, again, the whole Billy Epler having good, a reputation of signing good Japanese players. Obviously, Ohtani's already established in the majors as one of the best in the league. He could probably win MVP every single year. He probably should win MVP every single year. But I think that the Mets signing Senga is kind of like a stepping stone to trying to see if we can be the team that lands Ohtani, because every team is going to want him, and it's really, I'm not necessarily sure if it's going to come down to strictly just how much he gets paid. I think it's going to have to do with camaraderie in the clubhouse, and guys have consistently said that the Mets have a great clubhouse, and adding in that extra factor of having an established Japanese player who may be able to bring Ohtani in, that's really exciting. So I'm gonna go in halfway with you on that future regret there, Jason. But if I had to give a regret for myself, I remember sitting on the couch watching that Dodgers game again, the Mets Dodgers game, and Brandon Nimmo made that home run rob off from Justin Turner, and it was one of the best moments of his career, probably like one of the best moments of me sitting on my couch for Brandon Nimmo, because he was not really a great center fielder in the past. He made a lot of dumb, bad routes in center field, and he's really improved as a center fielder. So I think that my regret is going to be not trusting in the organization enough to believe that he was going to be with the team long term, because I told my wife, don't buy me a Brandon Nimmo jersey yet, because I'm not sure if he's going to be on the team next year. But I should have trusted the organization that they would sign him to a long-term deal. I mean, he's a Met through and through. He loves the team, and the team loves him, and the fans love him, and he's a great ball player. I mean, like I said earlier in the show, he's definitely not the best ball player in the league, but he's a guy you want on your team. He's a guy you want to win the World Series on your team. So that's my regret, not getting his jersey soon enough. So that'll be the next jersey that I get, is a Brandon Nimmo jersey.
And you have 8 more years to potentially get that jersey. So
Absolutely.
You got some time now. Got some time.
Hey, and if he plays really well, maybe it'll be one of those jerseys that never goes out of style, you know?
Oh, those are the best, man. Like my Curtis Martin dress I have, you know.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. That's all we have today, folks. So, John, thanks for joining today. John will be a future staple on this podcast. Myself, Jason, our Uncle Steve's, and the other Uncle Steve who owns the Mets. You know, a lot of uncles today. But this was Jets, Mets, and a couple of regrets. But until next time, we'll see you all later.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jason. Let's go Mets, let's go Jets.
Let's go Mets, let's go Jets.